Okay, hello. My name is Garrett Cook, and I want to just do a relatively quick overview of the threat versus safety theory and kind of its clinical application. I hope to do a couple of these. This is just an overview or session one. So if we were just starting out teaching this concept, this is sort of the overarching 30,000 feet view. Okay? What is threat versus safety theory? It was created originally a few years ago as a group of medical doctors got together as a response to the opioid crisis and a review of the current medical treatment model. These doctors, it expanded as they continued to work through the concepts to include mental health professionals, professionals in other areas of medicine. And so the group is, I don't know, about 25 people full-time that are working on this in different capacities through weekly meetings. And then specifically, I got involved in threat versus safety theory with Dr. Clausen, who we've been working on our own variation of this to try to pare it down, and that's what you're getting. It's evolved into definitely a mental health model, as research clearly shows that there is a bidirectional connection between your physical well-being, your lifespan, long-term chronic pain and diseases, and your mental health, adaptability, and where you're at and feeling safe or threatened in your world. At its core, we break down your well-being into a place of safety or threat. It's really simple, okay? You either feel threat in some areas of your life in which things are going off a little bit to deal with that threat, as has been our evolutionary basis, or you are in safety and you feel pretty good. And when you're in safety, we use the term in mental health, authentic self and all that stuff. Well, that's fluid in my mind, but you don't need to be self-aware and do self-digs because you feel comfortable and authentic in your world and where you're at in safety and threat. That's where we start creating those constructs and narratives. Depending on which side you fall into, will affect how the physiology of your body is working. And when you are in threat, your body corrodes. It's corrosion, okay? So your body starts to break down. Inflammation, disease, pain, these things go on, as well as mental health issues, depending on where that's directed. So over time, it's in threat, you're corrosive. And in safety, your body repairs. Pretty simple, right? So we want to aim to be safe, right? We want to keep that simple, even though it's not a simple issue. Treating mental health by deconstructing constructs and focusing instead on the physiology of our body. That's the main crux when it comes to it from a mental health perspective, which is what this presentation is mostly about, is cultural mental health. So you're treating mental health. We want to deconstruct our narratives, our stories, our constructs of what we think the world is supposed to be, what the culture has told us to be. We want to deconstruct those and see the truth to those, be adaptable and curious. And then instead of focusing on, all the time our self-awareness, the sense of self, all of those things, there's a place for all that to a certain extent. But first and foremost, what's going on in your body? What is the physiology of your body? What are your neurotransmitters telling you to do? Is it an act of aggression? Is it an act of bonding? Those are all things that are in our chemicals in our brain and neural pathways, etc. So that's kind of the concept. Where does threat and safety take place? Okay, so we have three pillars of threat response, okay, or safety response. It could be a threat response or a safety response. Environmental, a threat response in environmental, poor air quality, maybe mold in your home, a predator chasing you, a site of which triggers back trauma memories, things like that. People, maybe you got in a car accident, the next time in your car, boom, that's an environmental issue that's going on, right? That's the trigger of the environmental. Crime threatened areas, people that live in areas with a lot of crime, a lot of, that feels unsafe, right? Disorganized areas, a home that's, a hoarder or becomes overwhelmed with the amount of housework, or your office is poorly organized, things like that create anxiety. And then very much poor nutrition and sleep, that's the top of the paradigm, right? What's going on? Are you putting good foods into your body, or is there a toxic response to that? Are you getting enough sleep, or are you sleep deprived? Positive safety responses and environmental, an organized living space, access to nature, where you can get out and connect with nature. Nutritious food that is, going to fuel you. Fiscal security, obviously this is a very big one, but not being afraid every time that something goes wrong in the house. The disposal needs to be fixed. I can't afford it. Johnny needs new shoes. I can't afford it. That's obviously a huge environmental threat. So when you have fiscal security and you know that you can take on those unexpected expenses, that's a sense of overall safety. Having a safe tribe of people, be it a family, be it friends, a network, but where you fit, you feel secure. Having a secure space, okay, a place that is safe around you to live in and to rest in. And then procreation. I mean, that is a basic need of ours. So having our environmental would fall into areas of our sex drive and our sexual needs and procreation needs. That goes back to our evolutionary needs and basic needs. On the emotional side of our three pillars, an emotional threat, isolation, narratives, false narratives, hero stories, things like that, illusions of control. Let's go a bit with narratives, but also with actions, illusions of control, things that we do, tell ourselves or act. Something along that lines of an illusion of control may be somebody who is fiscally struggling, but puts a whole bunch of debt on their credit card in order to try to present themselves a certain way. That's an illusion of control. Social death, we'll talk more about this, but this is essentially a part of isolation, but also can be a cultural, generational thing. And then an emotional rejection, right? Abandonment, rejection, whether it be from a primary caregiver, whether it be from friends in a network, whether it be from a job, whether it be from somebody you have an interest in romantically. All of those things are emotional threats. On the flip side, intimacy. Intimacy is acceptance. Okay, we define intimacy as validation and non-judgment with somebody for your, and your true self. When you're giving what you're feeling in those moments, that true self in that moment, it's safe to express your emotions, your fears, your opinions, your jokes. This is a very unsafe world right now when it comes to PC and culture, where people do not feel intimate and safe with certain people, even in their own families. And so that's a big one, feeling that intimacy, that I can be who I am in this moment and be accepted and be okay. And know that if they don't like it, we'll have a talk about it and we'll create our boundaries. Healthy ego. Healthy ego is just basically knowing where you are in the world, what your gifts are, talents, what you like, and being able to express them. Healthy ego is being able to express boundaries and expectations in the world around you, be it in the job, be it in the family setting, whatever it is, so that your needs are met and it feels and you're reciprocating them, right? The healthy ego. And a sense of place is a huge one, right? So just where we belong, where we feel purposeful. This fits into something that we'll talk about later in social death and being in a part of a tribe. Another one is detachment from outcome. That's part of our narratives, part of our stories, but when we are emotionally in safety, we've detached from the outcome of what people think of us or what may happen next, or I have to do this, and we just go, I'm going to be here present. I'm going to detach from the outcome of what is to be, because I'm safe. No matter what, I'll be okay, I'll be safe. And the spiritual side, spiritual threat, a recluse nature, okay? Somebody who is not engaging with the world, not engaging with people. They are spiritually in threat, okay? Grandiosity, narcissism, things like that. That's a spiritual threat in my mind. When they are projecting these false presentations of themselves or their world, and how they're living in their life and where they fit in and how their sense of importance is. Fixation, all right? Fixating in competition, perhaps, things like that. A narrow view is an issue, okay? So those are things that I think about as well. Spiritual threats. On the other side, spiritual safety, connection to earth, belief in a higher power, no matter how you define that, what that is. Could be anything. It could be the great pumpkin, but a belief that there is more and that we are interconnected as humans to each other, to earth on a cellular level. We are all made up of energy at the core, right? So understanding that. And then I would say having having curiosity is a spiritual thing. Having curiosity to learn, curiosity in others, curiosity in the world. It can come in many forms, but having an ongoing curiosity is part of spiritual safety. Okay, so the types of threat, now that we've talked about some of our pillars, the types of threat that we talk about, we have acute threat. It's pretty clear. Okay, back in caveman days, if I have a saber-toothed tiger chasing me, I'm an acute threat, right? Um, if I have a stalker that is outside my window, I have an acute threat. Somebody is going to break up with me in this moment, and I can tell that's an acute threat. That's momentary, that's there, it's in front of me, and we go into our threat response. Second type of threat is chronic. Okay, this is ongoing trauma codes. Okay, ongoing trauma codes. If I experienced a narcissistic parent or an emotionally abusive or abusive parent, and I've found coping mechanisms, either safe or threatening coping mechanisms, maladaptive or adaptive, whatever it is, I've coped and found a way to survive, but I'm not thriving. Right, so that's a chronic threat. It's always going. It's like a virus on the computer, or malware in the computer. It's just in the background going all the time. Okay, but I don't necessarily see it. It's buried a lot more in the subconscious, and it comes out in different ways. Chronic pain fits into this too, right? So if I have chronic back pain, I have chronic fibromyalgia, if I have all these things, these chronic issues, I'm surviving, I'm dealing, but it's a threat. Okay, compounding threat. Okay, this is what goes on top. So I may have a chronic thing going on, I may have things, but these are what we're most fixated on day to day and in that moment. Poor relationships, right? If I have a poor relationship with a coworker, if I have a poor relationship with a supervisor, if I'm in the middle of a struggle with a spouse or with my kids, that's a compounding threat. Income instability is another one, right? How much do I have to work? Can I afford this so that Billy can go to camp? If I get sick, I could lose my house because I can't pay the mortgage. Conflict is a compounding threat. It's momentarily. I come home, I've had a long day. Johnny walks in the door, has had a rough day. He lashes out. I lash back. Now we're in conflict. That's a result of compounding threat. It's right in front of us. It's also part of an acute threat potentially too. Traffic is my favorite example, right? We get cut off in traffic, and traffic's slow. 10 minutes, it's going to take 10 minutes. We're going to be 10 minutes late. If our threat bucket isn't full, if our bandwidth is pretty good, we're fine, okay? But we deal with it. We come up with solutions. But when that bandwidth overflows, that bucket overflows, now we're out of our bandwidth, and we dissociate, and we have road rage. We see red. We flip somebody off. We scream. We do whatever. We lash out. And so that's part of it. And the way I look at this is that people that don't have chronic threat or live in a day-to-day life, maybe don't have acute threat, right? Acute threat could be, for example, maybe you wake up in the morning, you don't have chronic threat, but you know that your wife's cheating on you, or you suspect it. Well, you're an acute threat, right? That's going to take the focus and the fixation of most of your time. But you have chronic threat, you've dealt with stuff, you're going on. Your bucket when you start the day may already be filled at 80% because of all that you're dealing with. That means that any compounding issue that comes up, you're going to flip and go into dissociation, and that's going to overflow very quickly. Somebody who doesn't have a lot of chronic threat, or has deactivated that chronic threat, they're going to turn quickly. They may be at 20%, and then their conflicts at work with a coworker, they're going to be able to handle that. They're going to use conflict resolution. Traffic's a little late, they're going to text and say, hey, I'm 5 minutes behind. Can you pick up coffee for me if you're on time? Whatever, right? They're gonna deal with that, and they're gonna roll with the punches. It's physiologically challenging not to, and I'll explain why when you have threat bandwidth issues. Okay, so threat 1 and threat 2, the threat ladder. Right? We've heard this before: fight, flight, and a lot of times we hear freeze. Fight, flight, freeze is a subtype. I'll explain. Falter and faint. So fight, flight, falter, and faint. Okay. Threat 1 physiology is fight or flight. Okay, this is an aggravated or action. There's all action, but this is a response of movement in a lot of cases. I'm going to fight. My adrenaline goes up. Things are happening physiologically in my body. Right, my metabolism changes. I crave carbs. I crave sugars. I need stuff that'll turn to fuel quickly. Right, because I'm getting ready to fight or I'm getting ready to run. Right. Okay, so that's threat 1 physiology. That's the top. As we work down the ladder, we work towards falter and faint. Okay. Falter and faint, we're often resource hoarding. Okay, we're getting ready to hide for a long time. We're getting ready to hibernate. Bears hibernate. Why do they hibernate? Because they can't find food during winter. So they resource gather. All right, they put a lot of food, they build a lot of fat, their metabolism slows down, things in their body slow down, and they sleep until it's safe again. Right? That's what they do. They hibernate doing that. Okay, that's part of it. Right? And that's a dissociation. Um, freeze is in between the threat ladder. This is where you can go up or down. Okay, freeze is literally you're frozen, not knowing which way to go. So this is, inactivity because we're smelling the wind. I think of a deer when he hears a car or whatever, they look up, they freeze, then they see, they sniff the wind. Where's the threat? Do I run? Do I stay? What do I do next? Do I run in front of a car and get hit? Which would be a poor decision. Okay, so these are threat 1 and threat 2. All of these include being offline in some area of our brain. Okay, we're offline in some area of our brain. Our prefrontal cortex, our executive function goes, our problem solving skills may go offline, thinking goes offline. So for instance, I think about this in my own world. I'm terrible at math. Okay, here I am, I'm 16 years old, I'm terrible at math. My math teacher, it's algebra 2, says come up to the board and do this problem for me. Okay, what do? I get up there, I'm under threat, I can't problem solve as well. I'm going in front of people where I'm going to be judged, potentially shamed. It makes me feel stupid. We go offline. I'm not at my best in that moment to even do that problem that's being asked to the best of my ability. It's not possible because I'm offline in threat. I compensate and I make some stupid joke and I get kicked out of class because I've insulted the teacher. This is what happens. That's what happened. Get out, And so what do? I distract. I do something different, and so that I can't face that social death because I can't access my full capabilities and capacities. And this is what happens. This is not really debatable. This is scientific fact. There's plenty of places to look. So we go offline. So when we're in threat, we're not 100%. The basketball player that goes up to shoot free throws, he's hit 100 in a row in the gym the day before, but now he has to win the game, right? He goes offline. He's not as capable as he is in a normal situation because it's not normal. There is social death involved in this, okay? And those are all dissociations. There are different types of dissociations. You can dissociate in safety. You dissociate in laughter. You dissociate in sleep, okay? You go offline. You go out, right? You dissociate in when you have an orgasm. You dissociate. Oxytocin floods your body. You bond, right? You bond with that person, hopefully. Or to yourself. I don't know. I'm not judging. So, I guess I am judging. So that's safe dissociations. Negative dissociations, anger, rage, lashing out, whatever it may be, throwing things, whatever. We dissociate. We see red sometimes. We leave our body. We also dissociate in safety and visualizations and meditations, but we dissociate with dreams and things like that. So we're always dissociating in little ways. It's just when we sneeze, we dissociate. So we have to understand that we're always in a place of some level of dissociation. We're kind of moving in and out and fluid in where we're online and where we're deeper in our subconscious and our conscious minds, where that fits in. So how does this connect to the body? D.R. Clausen is the one that really pushes the idea of the keystone being the cytokine. Cytokines are pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory. They have two functions, okay? People in COVID were often dying, not of COVID, but of cytokine storms in their lungs. This is where they had cured the virus with inflammation but then the cytokines didn't stop because they didn't know that the virus and the threat was gone, so they attacked the healthy tissue in the lungs. And we have a cytokine storm, okay? When you break a leg, cytokines go there to deal with rebuilding of the fibrosis, or there's a skin abrasion, whatever it is, right? Cytokines, pro and anti-inflammatory, are running through our bodies to regulate our response in our body. It's the same thing in our brain. Cytokines are neurotransmitters as well, and they're they're an older neurotransmitter. They've been there for a while. DR is better at explaining that, but just understand that there's a keystone there that is part of our connection to our body. Chronic threat response leads to chronic pain and illness. If you're in threat, emotionally, spiritually, environmentally, if it over a period of time, it's gonna eventually lead to the corrosion of your body, which could lead to mental health issues, schizophrenia, whatever, manic episodes, psychosis, dissociation, but it could also lead to fibromyalgia, okay? Because those pro-inflammatory cytokines are trying to solve the threat. They're trying to kill the threat. instead of adapting it, or we're trying to do that. And that happens on a cellular level. The cells are promoting and signaling threat, okay, not safety. So examples of some of this connection to body, this bidirectional, back pain, autoimmune disease, lupus, things like that, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, the vagus nerve, and then, chronic illness, sleep, always tired, whatever, accelerating mental health issues. I mentioned digestive issues as well, neurodegeneration diseases, Alzheimer's, dementia, things like that. These things are exacerbated and more likely if you were living a life of chronic threat. So one of the things that we talk about a lot in mental health is we got to build resilience. We got to build resilience. We got to build resilience. Well, what does that exactly mean? What is resilience? And a lot of times I think we misunderstand it, and it's the adage, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Except that's not true. What doesn't kill you is just killing you slower, right? I mean, somebody who is a chronic meth addict is in his own way just as suicidal as somebody who is standing on a bridge ready to jump, right? One of them is using it as a coping mechanism because they're not ready to make that drastic choice, but they are still killing themselves slower, okay? Right? It is still a relatively suicidal concept, right? I know this is going to kill me if I'm doing hard drugs. I know if I mess around with fentanyl, the odds are I'm going to overdose, right? I don't care. Why? Because I don't value my life. I know if I jump off this bridge, I'll probably die, right? But one's doing it slower than the other. And that's what happens when we're in chronic threat. So when the threat, we break down, right? Our body breaks down. And in safety, we recover and rebuild. So resilience is the rebuild, okay? Rest and recovery, our body is healing itself, right? The cells are repairing themselves. Our body is in a place of healing because we're in, and that's a safe place. So when we are safe, we can rest and recover, and that is resilience, right? Our body heals. If we are trying to rest and recover, but we're under threat, we can't. We're anxious, our brain is wandering, our mind is wandering, everything is we're hyper vigilant about things, about fears around us, right? We can't rest and recover in that. We continue to corrode. Okay, so we got to get to safety, then we have to promote rest and recovery, and that'll make us more safe and more healthy. Okay, the role of social death here, and this is such a preliminary overview, but I want to do this. For me, the social death part is huge. Other people don't necessarily agree as much as I do on this. If you were talking to Dr. Clausen, he'd give you, he thinks it's important, but not as important. But he's slightly crazy, so we don't know what to make of him. He probably has lots of threat because of me. So the role of social death, the caveman, okay? If you go back to our history and where we started to build our routines, our instincts, and things like that, in caveman days, our ancient threat response system was really flushed out. We don't have thick fur. We don't have fangs. We don't have claws. Okay, bears, tigers, threats of the world, they're much more capable of wiping us out if it's a one-on-one fight. So in order for us to survive the predator, we have to have a tribe of us, a group of us with spears, because we have thumbs, because we've evolved intellectually. We have to have a plan, right? We have to set a trap, whatever it is. The group of us dynamic is what saves us. So if you look at our basic things for safety, shelter, right? Safety from predators and prey, right? Food and procreation, we could probably get food on our own, right? We could probably learn to fish and do things and survive for ourselves. But the other three, we certainly need people, right? We certainly need people. So that's where we build this tribe, where we're safe, okay? So what happens when we're ostracized from our tribe? Okay, we literally are still in the mindset in our threat response that rejection from people equals us being put out into the woods. And when we're out in the woods, it's only a matter of time until we die. So when we talk about the stress on teens who struggle to stand up in front of a group to give their report, or who become bullied, or who are rejected or in some way from the team or from whoever they adhere to, or they want to become tribal connected, that becomes death social death. And our threat response is fully engaged and offline. It's very, 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 very dangerous, but it also is our solution because it's very easy then to, if we can get into another tribe, we can create safety. I believe that's about 70% of mental and physical health stuff. You know, for chronic pain, chronic disease, mental health, we got to socialize you in a safe place without, with safe people. But this is also a cultural issue. Okay, so it isn't just that. Slavery was a social death. The Holocaust was a social death. Okay, the way we low-income people that may be considered poor or whatever is a social death. Different people in different religions and different times of history have been a social death. When one group craps on the other and starts to utilize them as less than and starts to put them in a cultural context of less than, you now have a cultural social death. All right? Right? So that is something that becomes a cultural trauma and a cultural threat that we could carry. Right? So when we start, I mean, I'm a white male, I get it. Right? I'm a white heterosexual male, I think. That, I mean, not that dating has proven maybe I shouldn't be, but that is a threat, right? Right? That is a threat that I am not going to have as much as somebody else who falls into a marginalized group. Okay, so that culturally you're not valued in your tribe as a group if you are race, economic, religion, sexual orientation, whatever. Okay, but also you may still find safety within your group, within that group. So those threats, they both need to be addressed. The biggest piece in this, in my mind, is we all need to become safe in conflict. This is something that's really hurting us today, is that we aren't safe in the Socratic method. We aren't willing to talk back and forth and learn from each other and come up with new ideas and start to really, well, hey, what's this mean? Because we're afraid of conflict. So we either don't address it and we bury our head in the sand and then become upset later about, you can't believe this has happened, and we go home and kick the dog, or we overdo it and we just become completely over the top. This loan package should never happen. This is socialism. This is this. F this guy, F that guy, F this president, F that president, right? All that does is create conflict for everybody, right? That creates threat. And you're dialing into your threat because that's the construct of safety you think it is, but it's killing you. It's not safe. It just isn't. It's not safe. So we have to become safe in saying, I don't agree with you, and be okay that we don't have to agree, but we can still be part of our tribe. We can still be safe. We don't have to agree on everything. We're different. And we come from different experiences. We don't teach conflict safety enough because we don't let kids or each other, we're afraid of even having it. So we ignore it. We gotta it's something you practice and you become safe with it. And I really think that's important. What is safety? Safety is an alignment and balance in the mind and body. Okay, you're safe when you are in alignment. So to use Freud, because I think it's a decent look at it, the ego, superego, and it, who I am, who I think I am, and what the world wants me to be. If those three things aren't in alignment, right, and that's a simplistic view of it, but if those things aren't in alignment, Freud would say of nervosa, we call it anxiety. What it really is threat. We're in threat, right? Because something isn't aligned. Okay, the body and mind are bidirectional. So when our body is healthy, our brain is healthy, right? They affect each other. Right? And sometimes we can look great, right? But our body's not healthy. We might look great, but have bulimia. We might look great, but have anorexia or disorganized eating. We might look great, but be on steroids. We might look great, but we have a fixation and addiction to working out that is breaking down our body, okay? So we have to align those things. The use of positive chemicals in the brain under safety to feel connected, wanted, valued, and validated, okay? So here's the thing, oxytocin, we used to call that the love chemical. We used to call that the bonding chemical. It helps you bond. But in safety, it helps you bond. In threat, it certainly doesn't. In threat, it becomes jealous, right? It has a different view. It's a different situation, okay? So when we have oxytocin through touch or connection or sex or orgasms, whatever, if it's under threat for some reason, it doesn't work. Same thing is true of dopamine and serotonin and things like that. Dopamine is aggressive under threat. And we need to move from dopamine to consistent joy and awe. And what this means is dopamine is kind of like our reward center, right? We're like, that felt great. That felt great. I love skydiving. I love singing karaoke. I love getting drunk and singing karaoke. I love swiping on Tinder and getting validated. I love likes on Facebook and all this. It's a dopamine spike. It's a dopamine spike. It's a dopamine spike. These video games, dopamine spikes. That's not happiness, right? We've replaced that with joy, awe, and happiness, right? And joy and awe are a deeper seated issue that's on a lower level where we are aligned. The ego, superego, and the id. Our subconscious are so much stronger, and our subconscious doesn't accept our view of what's going on in our conscious mind. If it doesn't accept it, it doesn't work. That's why I can stand in front of a mirror and say, you are a beautiful 6'5" athletic black man named Darius, who is a guy I really like, and he was a model, and he's a good dude. I'll never be that. I'll never look like that. No matter how many affirmations I tell myself, I won't. It doesn't happen. Okay? Because that's not who I am. And my conscious mind may try to make me believe it. Subconscious will never believe it. Boom. What's that? That's our ego, superego, and our id are now in conflict, and we're out of alignment. Okay? So safety is alignment. Okay, almost done, guys. The treatment paradigm. All right? This is still a work in progress. We're really trying to nail this down. But what we got now is understanding that life is threat. Okay? There's always going to be threats in life. If you have the idea that there isn't, okay, and I think I missed one of the little things I was going to talk about, which is the Stockdale paradox. But if you think that you're being dishonest, it's a false narrative. Stockdale paradox. Okay, Admiral Stockdale was in the Hanoi Hilton. That's where John McCain was. He was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. They asked him when he got home why he lived and others didn't. He said the ones that died, didn't make it, were the optimists. They're the ones that got up every morning and said, "Don't worry, we're going to be home by Christmas." Christmas would come and go, and they wouldn't be home. Don't worry, we're going to be home by New Year's. Come and go, they wouldn't be home. It's okay, we're going to be home by spring. And what Stockdale said is they are the ones that didn't make it. They died of a broken heart. Okay. Well, I would say they died of a false narrative and false construct, and it killed them. Right. That's the problem. What the paradox is you have to take. Stockdale said you have to look at every day and go, I know unequivocally I'm going to get to where I want to go. I'm going to become what I want to become. I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be a good parent. I'm going to get sober. I'm going to get clean. I'm going to get my kids back. I'm going to go to college and finish. But right now, this is really tough. This is dire, and I have to work hard, right? So that's the paradox. How do you do both? And it's pretty simple if you are honest with yourself and you remove constructs and narratives. Stage one, check the tip of the iceberg, okay? We're not going to start at the bottom, okay? If you had a bad attachment issue, if you had chronic trauma, you had abuse, we're not going to start there. That's not going to make you safe. You're not going to heal if you're not in safety. We're going to remove the easiest things to put you in safety. Check the tip of the iceberg. Is your sleep okay? Nutrition good? Are you exercising? Are you active in expression? Play, right? Social support. Do you have a good social system? And then tools to activate the parasympathetic system to help us when we're struggling. Meditation, visualization, breath work, stuff like that. Those are all really good, okay? Stage two, when we get those the tip of the iceberg handled, right? The things that are the immediate threats on our mind, then we're going to address the compounding threat and build solutions, okay? All right, this is a time we're going to engage the client into a tribe, right? We're going to get into support groups or a vocation that they love with good people, people with shared values, hobbies. We're going to help them find their new safe tribe. We have to help them. And as a therapist or a counselor, we'd be a part of that, right? As a parent, we're a part of that for our children. As a child, we're that for a parent that may be struggling. Okay, so we're going to address that compounding threat and solutions and take action in that. Okay. Stage three, so that's the compounding threat. I'm sorry. So compounding threat is through socialization. Stage three is address the chronic threat, deactivate codes and triggers. Okay. Stage three is now we know you had some abuse, you had trauma, you had things of PTSD kind of issues. We're going to address that when we are in safety, when we are in a better relative safe place. Okay. And we're going to try to remove you from the triggers of that. If you have an abusive spouse, we want to remove you from the home where you're experiencing an abusive spouse. How can you ever get safe if that's there? If you have an emotionally abusive parent, we may need to remove you from that, right? Until you become safe and strong and can build your boundaries. Remove triggers and toxins in the environment, right? That could be literally toxins, alcohol, drugs. That could be emotional toxins. And this, is a time to talk about our attachment issues and how we go about the world with our attachment style, how we perceive, because I believe that it's all about our past tells us how we perceive threats. Okay, our attachment tells us how we perceive threats in future relationships and social relationships and issues, in everything, spirituality and environment. And then we have to understand that we're never ever totally safe every time. There's threats that come up in our life. So staying on top of our tune-ups, connecting with ourselves, with connecting with our tribe, connecting with our body, with our environment. We need to do that. Okay, so we never stop using our tools. This is not a treatment and then you're fixed. This is a lifestyle change to a certain extent. Okay, so in summary, threat versus safety theory is not just an approach to wellness, but a philosophy that should be applied to our culture. I misspelled culture. Now I'm under threat. Whoops, sorry. Its benefits are ideal for education, management in the workplace, family dynamics, athletics, government and social programs, and most areas of our life that rely on connection. I mean, this is everything, right? This is a philosophy and an approach, not just a theory of treatment. It's not exclusive concept, but rather incorporates many current theories. There's a place for CBT and DBT. There's a place for cognitive therapy. There is a place for meditation, visualization. There's a place for spirituality. There's a place for religion. Everything can belong here for the most part. What we really do is exclude the things that are threats, right? And that are constructs that are going to be negative, right? So the proper timing of these treatments and application is the key. As to be able to truly benefit, one must be online, emotionally, mentally, environmentally, and in safety. So that's it. That's an overview of threat versus safety theory. Hopefully, if I'll make more of these and people care, then we'll keep doing it.